Hello world, and welcome back to another Mekanism tutorial, where today we're going to be covering something a little bit bigger, and that is going to be all about quadrupling our ores, meaning we'll get 1 iron ore in, we'll get 4 iron ingots out. Now this video is going to be a little bit of a part 2. If you missed the previous episode, we talked about all about auto mining, how to get it out the ground and how to auto craft it. But now let's talk about getting more bang for your buck. As always guys, if this video helps you out in any way, shape or form, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And ring the bell button for more tutorials in the future. But now it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for, and that is how to actually quadruple your ores. For that we're going to need another brand new machine, and that is the chemical injection chamber. This is going to use the purification chamber, we showed that off last time. You are also going to need 2 elite control circuits, 4 refined alloys or reinforced alloys, sorry, and 2 gold ingots inside any sort of crafting table. Now the chemical injection chamber can be used for multiple things, not just for timesing your ores. This process is actually used in 5 timesing your ores, but we're not going to be showing that today. As well as that, the chemical injection chamber can also revive any sort of dead blocks such as corals, or it can also make concretes from the powder, of course, as well as, say, turning dirt into clay, or actually turning clay bricks themselves back into clay, or if you really wanted to, even terracotta into clay. Many different things. As well as that, there are things that are more advanced, such as using plutonium pellets, but we're not going to be showing that off today, as that's a little bit more advanced. Today we're going to be doing the basic thing of turning our ores into shards and 4 timesing our stuff. As you can see here, in order to 4 times, we're going to need hydrogen chloride. Now you can either do this by making hydrogen chloride or by using salt. If you're still very early in the game, you're most likely going to be using salt, but there is a big problem when using salt. Inside of our chemical chamber here, we can see that this can hold 210 millibuckets of chloride inside, hydrogen chloride. Now each salt gives you exactly 2 millibuckets of hydrogen chloride, and you need 190 millibuckets per craft of 1 single ore, which means you're going to need 77 salt in order to just do 1 single ore. So it's not exactly the best way of doing it. Now I am going to show you how to make hydrogen chloride today, but at the basic level, let's show you the rest of the series. So first, let's just dump everything inside here. Now, all these machines do actually have 8 speed upgrades, but as you can see, this is still very slow. But the backlog that is here is not actually going to be the speed itself, it's going to be the salt in the hydrogen chloride. Now, this is again going to give us some iron shards, so if I just spawn in some iron shards here, just to demonstrate the rest of the facility. If we go over to our purification chamber next, we're going to now take these shards and turn these shards with oxygen. Oxygen, we've seen how to do that before, it's using the electrolytic separator, and water to turn hydrogen and oxygen apart, and we're using the oxygen to turn these shards into iron clumps. These iron clumps then go into the crusher and they get crushed into dirty iron dust. The dirty iron dust then goes into the enrichment chamber and turns from dirty iron dust into regular iron dust, and then finally we have the energized smelter, which is going to smelt our iron dust into our iron ingots. And that is the basic way of 4 timesing our ore. If that's all you wanted to know, then feel free to click a like and leave the video, but let's now show you how to make hydrogen chloride itself and get this first initial point of this crafting series to get going. Now looking inside of JEI, up here we have hydrogen chloride. If I look at how to make that, we're first going to need the chemical infuser, which I will be showing you how to make, but as well as that we're going to need chlorine and hydrogen. As just explained, we're going to need the electrolytic separator with some water in order to get ourselves some hydrogen, but we are also going to need chlorine. Now chlorine is going to be made again inside the electrolytic separator. This is going to make sodium and chlorine. The sodium we can just dump, we do not need that. But what we do need is brine. Brine is something that we are going to need in order to make this craft. Now brine is being created inside of the Thermal Evaporation controller. Now this is a multi-block structure. So first off, we are going to need some thermal evaporation blocks. Now you can get 4 of these per craft, and each craft is going to require 1 copper ingot and 4 steel ingots inside any crafting table. So let's get ourselves some of those. Next, you're going to need the controller itself. That's going to require 5 of these evaporation blocks, 1 empty bucket, 1 glass pane, and 2 advanced control circuits. Now we only need 1 of these per per our multi-block. And lastly, we're going to need some thermal evaporation valves. Now each of these are going to require 4 evaporation blocks and 1 advanced circuit. Now you only get 1 of these per craft, and you only need a minimum of 1 of them per multi-block. Now I actually created one of these machines ahead of time. This thermal evaporation block chamber machine thing, whatever you want to call it, is a 4x4x3 structure at the minimum. Of course you're going to need 1 controller, you're going to need 1 valve, and you're actually going to need 38 evaporation blocks in order to make the structure in total. You're going to need a completely solid base of only using evaporation blocks. If I now break this controller here and I place it on the bottom and I switch these around, as you can see, it doesn't actually craft the machine. However, the controller can be at the very top level if you so desired, and again you only need 1 valve. On this one specifically I do have multiple valves because it just makes sense. You're going to see why you're going to need at least 2 valves to begin with. But for now, let's have a look at the interface. Inside of here we have on the left our input, on the right side we have our output, on the bottom here we have our temperature, and in the middle we have a little bit more information. As you can see, it says formed, which means it's obviously working, it's created, but even if it wasn't formed, the screen would be black and we wouldn't be able to access it anyway. So let's just leave that formed there and look inside again. We have a height of 3. This machine can be up to a height of 18 blocks. As you can see, I've got this fully advanced one over here. Now the only thing the height does, it does give us a tiny little bit more of a temperature increase, but not so much of one. But what it mainly does is increases our production rate, but we'll get into that into a little bit. So for now, let's actually start pumping in a little bit of water. We're just using ourselves an electric pump. This electric pump does actually have 8 speed upgrades in it already, and here we actually need to have ourselves a valve. And we place this down in here, and you can see it's going to start filling up with water very quickly. And we're already starting to make brine, but it's going to be at a very slow pace. Now to get brine out, you're going to need another valve, which is why you want to have a second, and this is going to be a liquid. So if we put this here, and let's just get ourselves a tank. Let's place ourselves an ultimate tank down just for argument's sake. As you can see here, brine is not automatically being taken out. You are going to need the configurator and set the pipe to pull in order to actually automatically pipe out this brine. Now, how do you actually increase your amount of brine out of this machine? If you look inside, we are creating brine at 0.25 millibuckets per tick, which isn't a lot. You obviously need 1,000 millibuckets per bucket of brine. Now, you increase your production by increasing the temperature. The temperature can be increased in multiple ways, one of which is the biome you're in. We're just in a regular old plains biome at the moment, and this is going to give us X amount of heat, but if you're in the desert, this would get a lot hotter, and if you're in a snowy biome, it would get a lot colder. But there are other ways of increasing the temperature, one of which is actually increasing the height of this. So it's now at 30.84. If we increase this to 1 higher, it's now going to reform, and now it goes up to just a little bit higher. In fact, that was a complete lie. It does not go any hotter at all. I'm really surprised about that. The way you actually have to create even exponential more heat is by using heaters. Now there are 2 different types of heaters, one of which is the Fuelwood Heater, the other is the Resistive Heater. The Fuelwood Heater, let's cover that first. This is going to require 2 furnaces, 1 steel casing, 5 steel ingots, and 1 basic control circuit. And let's get ourselves one of these Fuelwood heaters. Now these Fuelwood heaters, since we're going to be transferring heat, we're also going to need these thermodynamic conductors. We've covered these before, and that's going directly into this valve here. So let's just actually first separate the 2 here, and inside of this we'll have a temperature. Right now it is actually giving off temperature even though there is no fuel. It's giving off a temperature of 26.85, not exactly a lot. I believe that is the case. If I remove these very quickly, how much do we actually have in here now? Okay, it's the same amount, so it's not actually creating any. That's another lie just right there, keeping you all on your toes. Now inside of here, this Fuelwood Heater, even though it says Fuelwood Heater, you can actually put any sorts of fuel inside. So just for argument's sake, let's get ourselves some coal blocks. Let's just put a full stack in here. As you can see, the temperature, the fuel is 8,000. That's going to be for 1 cost of block, and this temperature is going to be rising rapidly. It does have a limit per the block. The block is going to get up to whatever temperature it gets up to. It's slowing down now. About 86.3 is where we're at, and the temperature is being thrown directly inside. Now inside of here we can see the temperature has rapidly increased, going all the way up to probably nearly 500 centigrade once this is done, and our millibuckets per tick production has gone up a lot. We've gone from 0.25 now up to nearly 40 millibuckets per tick. That is a hell of an increase. But as you can see, it's not the maximum. There is a much better way of getting the maximum amount of temperature that doesn't involve using fuel, as obviously this is going to go through a lot of coal or a lot of whatever fuel you want to use, and this maxes out at 86.38 here. There is no more. If we tried something else after this filled up, let's see what we actually get to. But for now, let's move on to our other heater. If we move over now to the resistive heater, this is going to require 1 steel casing, 4 tin, 3 redstone dust and 1 energy tablet, and we'll get ourselves the resistive heater. Now the resistive heater gives ourselves some very different stuff. As you can see, we've got a temperature in here, but that temperature is only there because of the heater next door. That is not its default. The default for this is a lot lower. I think it goes down to about 25 in total. How about we just try this right now? Look at that, the heat's being transferred back. But inside of here we have got a temperature of around 26.8. Now, as you can tell, this is going to require power. Instead of using fuel, this just requires power, which is why I recommend it a lot more. This little green square indicates where the power is. It can be one on either side. Let's just place it this time for now. And it's going to start using 40 forge energy per tick in order to create some energy. And this is going to start climbing. Now, it's not going to do too much more than the fuel wood at the beginning. As you can see, it's actually not producing as much as those coal blocks. But something interesting about this resistive heater, if we wanted to, we could actually increase the amount of energy used, and this will give us some more energy. So if we really wanted to, let's just place in here a stupid amount of energy per tick. Click this button here to say yes, or hit the enter key, and as you can see, we are now using 10 MFE per tick. We've gone up to 3.767878 wow, million degrees centigrade. That's obviously draining a lot of power. Good thing we're using a creative energy block here. Now inside here, you can see that the temperature has gone up to well over 13 million, and we are producing a maximum amount of 240 millibuckets of brine per tick, and the water is being produced or used incredibly quickly. We are going to now, at this point, because this has multiple speed upgrades, we're going to need multiple pumps in order to actually get enough water in here without using it in time. But as you can see, this bar's maxed out, but it doesn't show any signs of slowing down. If I just get rid of those now, this will actually start decreasing in temperature slowly over time. But the only way to actually increase your production further, any higher than 240 brine per tick, is by actually increasing the size of this. This is where the size comes into it, and you can go again up to 18 blocks tall. Now that this is, say, what, 5 blocks tall? Yeah, 5 blocks tall, we can now make 300 millibuckets per tick. And the brine is still being churned out ever so slowly. But now we need more water, of course. Now, ahead of time, I have actually created the perfect way of getting the maximum you can get with this thermal evaporation block. Now, this inside here, we can have a look. We have got loads of water. The maximum amount of this water this can store is 4.6 million water when it's at the full block of 18 high. And at the very top, as you saw in the beginning of this, the water is actually physically stored inside. It's pretty cool, but I don't believe you can actually drown in it. But I could be completely wrong there. As well as that, we have a max production of 1080 millibuckets per tick. That means every tick we're going to essentially get just over a bucket of water. Now, the temperature in order to get this max amount here is 2.72k degrees centigrade of temperature. This is what gives us our maximum output. Now, in order to get this temperature, you're going to need literally only one resistive heater, and we need to be using it at 1280. So if you type in 1280 and then click enter, it will give us this temperature, and this is going to supply us with enough temperature at the maximum to get ourselves the maximum amount of production. So this is the best way I can see of putting your heat in without overdoing it. You could obviously do multiple Fuelwood heaters, or you could even do multiple resistive heaters, each using a less amount of energy. So if you wanted to, you could have 2 resistive heaters here, each at 640 if you really wanted to, but I don't see the point of that. Just use all of it in the one power source. However, as you can see over here, we've had to use a lot more of electric pumps. Here we've got 7 on this side, and we're using the ultimate mechanical pipe. Now, the ultimate mechanical pipe, it does actually say inside the tooltip, it has a maximum pumping rate of 64 bar buckets. So that means we cannot put any more electrical pumps on this system, as one electrical pump by default pumps 1000 millibuckets, and each with 8 speed upgrades gives you 10 times, which means we're getting 10,000 millibuckets per electric pump. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's still not enough to max it out. So I've added a 7th here. This does have all 8. You don't actually have to put all 8 speed upgrades in. So you need 7 of these in order to max out one pipe, and then using a second valve and 4 more pipes, this last one being only at 6 times and the other 3 being at 8 times. This is the maximum, or rather the minimum, you're going to require when you have your heat at max temperature. I know it's a little bit hard to follow, but essentially you're going to need, say, 11 electric pumps all at their max pumping rates on 2 different lines in order to get this water supplied to the point where it's actually gaining instead of losing. As if I just take out one of these, eventually this water is actually going to start decreasing. There might be a little bit of a buffer inside, but it will start decreasing over time. So let's leave that as it is right now, and we'll come back to it in a bit. Now there's one other way that I've just discovered in actually creating more temperature out of this machine if you wanted to, instead of using yourselves a resistor down there, and that's by using these advanced generators. Now we're not going to be showing how to make these today, but just as a quick craft, you're going to need this, and then this, and then this. So they are very similar to make, but they're going to be covered in a different episode of power generation. But you need basically one of these in each of these corners to then give ourselves a little bit more temperature. As you can see here, our temperature is actually increasing slowly over time. So it's up to you whether you want to use this or the resistor. This is probably going to save you more power, of course. The more you have of these, the obviously less power you're going to need on the resistors. But if you haven't made it to the point of getting these solar power generators, but you probably have once you get into times 4ing, you can obviously do this and use less power here. So now let's actually go on to making this little machine. The chemical infuser. The chemical infuser is created using 1 steel casing, 4 infused alloys, 2 basic control circuits, and 2 basic chemical tanks. Now this machine works in the exact same way as any other machine. You've got its upgrades and configurations. On the left we have any sort of chemical, and on the right we have another chemical, and the 2 fuse together and they make ourselves something new. It's pretty much the exact opposite of the electrolytic separator. Now if we take this machine only has 5 uses, but we're only going to cover one of them today. But the 5 uses are making uranium hexafluoride, where it's making sulfuric trioxide, sulfuric acid, hydrogen chloride, which is what we're going to be making today, and DT fuel. But now let's go over into our setup and actually figure out how to make ourselves this hydrochloric hydrogen chloride, sorry. So taking our brine, we are pumping it out directly into an electrolytic separator. Now this is going to be making sodium and our chlorine here, our chlorine. On the left we are just going to be dumping the sodium as we do not need it. So this is literally, it's still pumping out 1000 per tick. You can see the fuel is still going in, and we do have speed upgrades in this and muffling upgrades, so that's why it's working so effectively, as you can see here. And this is pumping our chlorine all the way into our chemical infuser. Now on this side we have an electrolytic separator just with water being pumped in. We are using the hydrogen this time and then dumping our oxygen. So the hydrogen is going into the other side of this chemical infuser. Now inside of here we've got chlorine on the left, we've got hydrogen on the right, and this is giving ourselves some hydrogen chloride. Now inside of here I've just got a gas tank here, but if I put in a brand new hydrogen tank here, let's see, a chemical tank. Let's get ourselves another one of these ultimate ones here. Place it down. It's going to start filling up very quickly. As you can see, this is still a slow process. We do have speed upgrades in here, but it's still incredibly slow. So you really don't need one of these completely maxed out in order to get this to produce more than enough chlorine. But as you can see, if I now pump this directly over to there, this is going to, I think this is a liquid. No, it's not, it's a gas. So for that, we're going to need pressurized tubes. Let's use ourselves some ultimate pressurized tubes here and go all the way over to our nifty machine here. Also get rid of that. We now have our chlorine. If we take our blocks here and place it inside, this is now going a lot quicker. But it still isn't exactly pumping the greatest, but it's still a hell of a lot faster than it was before. I think the problem is that we're actually not making enough chlorine, even still, to make this go. So just for fun, I've actually added a second one of these chemical infusers just to see if it can keep up. And looking at these pressurized tubes, even with just having the one of these brine makers over here, that's what I'm going to call them from now on, the pipe is still filling up. So 2 of these will actually be enough to keep this machine going at least a little bit more consistently. Now this, of course, does have the speed upgrades. If I took all of these out, how slow is this actually going to go? It looks like the speed's actually the exact same. All that's different is the consumption of hydrogen, so it must be going just at least a little bit quicker. It's actually only when it gets to 7 times the speed. When it's at 6, it's fine. When it's at 7 times the speed, that's when you're going to need to think about having a third chemical infuser. But as you can see, this is the setup that it's going to create in order to get yourselves the best you can possibly get when it comes to 4 timesing your ores. However, that is not the end. There is one final machine I would like to show off today. One little quirk, one little extra bonus at the end here, and that is going to be the security desk. The security desk is using 1 steel casing, 2 elite control circuits, 1 teleportation core, 4 steel ingots, and 1 glass block. And this is going to give us the security desk. The security desk itself does not need any sort of power, but this is all about linking your machines together in a certain way. You may have noticed that throughout this tutorial I have had all of our machines on private, and this is what the security desk is all about. Well, if you wanted to do over here on the side, we have an override. The override is going to choose one of these different items down here. We have public, private, and trusted. At the moment, everything over here, as you can see, is private. If I have this as trusted and did override and then went to the machine, you can see here it says overridden. It's now public because I've overridden every single one of our machines. So over here as well, you see this is overridden as 2. But if I turn this off, it will then go back to private. Very, very handy stuff here. But this one didn't. I guess I didn't lock that originally. As well as that, you can do the same. You can change every single item you've ever placed down and created into private or trusted. Now, trusted is where things come into over here. If I wanted to add Moocow47 into our list over here, we can now have him as a trusted username. And that means this trusted person, if we had our machines all set to trusted, Moocow47 would actually be able to access these machines and use them if we so wanted to. One last thing we could do, if for whatever reason you wanted to do this, see this chemical infuser here, inside of it is actually, it's set to public. If I hold down shift here, what I could do is place this block in here and now it's trusted, or I could change it to private. It's just a way of setting blocks ahead of time if you wanted to. I don't know if you could automate this, you might be able to, but I don't know why you would. And then the other thing you could do is that if this has been set to trusted or private here, let's just set it to private. I can't actually place it in anymore, which is a little bit strange, so let's do it with a different machine. What you have to do is first unlock it. There you go. You have to unlock it first, then you got to set it to something. Here it's now trusted, here it's private, and then here it's stored, public. We take it out, we can't put it back in. You have to unlock it first to then put it back in to reset it. This is basically the reset button over here. So if we'll set that to trusted, it says trusted, put it over here, it's now back to public, regardless of what it is down here. Lastly, you can also remove people's names. Well guys, that is everything when it comes to 4 timesing your output of ores. We've gone all over the thermal evaporation, some heaters, as well as a way of making some new gases, as well as, you know, one more bonus with the security desk. But if this video helped you out in any way, shape or form, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And ring the bell button for more Mekanism tutorials in the future, where next time we're going to be going all over your different power generations. One could say some are even nuclear. But until next time guys, take care.